My name is Curtis, and up until a few days ago, I thought I had a stable, happy marriage. I wasn't naive enough to believe we were perfect. No marriage is, but I thought we were solid, strong, trustworthy. I had no idea how wrong I was. It started on an ordinary evening. Nothing felt off, no warning signs, no gut feeling telling me to be careful. My wife, Lorna, had been acting a little distant, but I chalked it up to stress. Work had been demanding for both of us, and I figured we just needed some time together. I even made plans for a weekend trip, thinking maybe a change of scenery would bring us closer again. But I never got the chance to bring it up. That night, I came home later than usual. I had been caught up at the office, finishing a project, and when I finally pulled into our driveway, I noticed something strange. Another car was parked outside. Not a neighbor's. Not someone I recognized. A bad feeling settled in my stomach, but I shook it off. Maybe she had a friend over. Maybe it was something innocent. I had no reason to doubt her. At least, that's what I told myself. I stepped inside, and everything felt off. The house was too quiet, yet somehow filled with an energy that made my skin crawl. The kind of tension you can't see but you can feel. And then I heard it. Laughter. Hers. But not just hers. There was a man's voice too. Deep. Familiar. I followed the sound, my heart pounding harder with every step. When I turned the corner into the living room, I froze. Lorna was sitting on the couch, leaning in close to a man I recognized instantly. His name was Nolan. We weren't best friends, but I knew him well enough. He worked with her. I had met him at office parties, at gatherings, always assuming he was just a coworker, nothing more. But the way they were looking at each other told me everything. My first reaction wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was this surreal numbness, like my mind couldn't quite process what my eyes were seeing. I stood there, watching my wife, light up at something another man said. Her body language, the way she touched his arm, the intimacy of it all. It was unmistakable. I didn't make a sound. I didn't storm in. I didn't throw accusations. Instead, I did something I never imagined I would do. I took off my wedding ring. Lorna finally noticed me. Her eyes widened, shock flickering across her face as she scrambled to straighten up. "Curtis," she started, but I didn't let her finish. I walked forward, calm, too calm, and I placed the ring right on the coffee table between them. "You dropped this somewhere along the way," I said, my voice steady. Nolan stiffened. He knew. He knew I had caught them. But Lorna? She hesitated, her mouth opening and closing like she was struggling to find the right words. "Curtis, wait." But I was already turning away. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't cracked. I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt too much. So much that my body just shut down. I walked to the door, but before I stepped out, I looked back just once. "You might want to figure out how to explain this," I said. "Because whatever you thought this was, it's over." And then I left. I had no idea what would happen next. But what had happened? It was something I never could have predicted. I didn't drive home that night. Not because I didn't have a place to go, but because I didn't want to go home. Home? The word didn't even feel right anymore. The house where I had spent years building a life with Lorna now felt tainted, like it belonged to someone else. So, I drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring past me as my mind raced. I replayed the scene over and over. The way she leaned in close, the way she laughed, the way Nolan didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. But the strangest part? I still wasn't angry. Maybe it was shock. Maybe my brain hadn't caught up with the reality of it all. But instead of rage, I felt this eerie calm, like I was watching my life unravel from a distance. At some point, I pulled into a late-night diner. One of those old-school places with flickering neon signs, and a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the 80s. I sat in a booth by the window, ordered a coffee, and stared out into the night. That's when my phone buzzed. "Lorna." I didn't answer. Another buzz. Another. Then a text. "Curtis, please come back. We need to talk." I let out a bitter laugh. Talk? Now she wanted to talk? Where was this urgency when she was wrapped up with Nolan, giggling like a schoolgirl? I set my phone face down on the table and took a slow sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. It should have comforted me. It didn't. Minutes passed, maybe an hour, and then another text came through, one that made my stomach drop. Curtis, please. He's gone. Just come home. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared at the message, trying to decipher it. He's gone. Did she kick him out? Did he leave on his own? And why did it sound like she was alone? A twisted part of me wanted to see her squirm, to let her sit in her own guilt and deal with the silence. But curiosity got the better of me. I paid my tab, got back in the car, and started driving. Not because I forgave her, not because I was ready to talk, but because something about that text, it didn't sit right with me. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I noticed something immediately. The other car, the one that had been there when I arrived earlier, was gone. The house was dark, except for a single light in the living room. I could see her silhouette through the window, pacing. I stepped inside, and the moment she saw me, her whole body sagged with relief. Curtis, she breathed, like she had been holding her breath for hours. I didn't say anything. I just closed the door behind me and folded my arms, waiting. She hesitated, then took a step closer. He left. As soon as you walked out, he left. I nodded, as if that meant anything to me. Good for him. Lorna flinched at my tone. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. I let out a humorless laugh. So what? You did mean for me to find out? Just in a different way? Her face crumpled. No, I never wanted you to find out at all. Wrong answer. I clenched my jaw, feeling the first flicker of something close to anger. That's supposed to make me feel better? She shook her head quickly, tears welling in her eyes. No, Curtis, I screwed up, okay? I made a mistake. I tilted my head. A mistake? How long? Her throat bobbed. How long? A beat of silence. Then, finally, a few months. I exhaled through my nose, staring past her like she wasn't even there. Months. While I was out here thinking we just needed a weekend getaway, she had been sneaking around behind my back for months. She reached for me, but I took a step back, shaking my head. Don't. Curtis, please, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. I swear. It was stupid. I was stupid. I looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time in 10 years, I saw her for what she was. A stranger. I shook my head, took a slow step toward her, and spoke in a voice so calm it scared even me. You've got one chance, I said. One chance to tell me the truth. No more lies. No more sugarcoating. Lorna's eyes widened. I am telling you the truth. Are you? I studied her, waiting for her to crack. And then she did. The tears, the guilt, the trembling hands, they all fell away. And for a single second, I saw something else flash across her face. Something cold. Something calculating. And that's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. Not of losing me, but of what would happen next. I stood there, watching Lorna, waiting for her to say something, anything, that would prove me wrong. That would make me believe, even for a second, that the woman I married still existed somewhere beneath the betrayal. But I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't devastated because she had hurt me. She wasn't breaking down because she had ruined our marriage. She was scared because she didn't know what I would do next. And that realization hit me harder than anything else. Why now? I finally asked, my voice even. Why tonight? Why him? She exhaled shakily, rubbing her arms like she was cold. Curtis, I raised a hand. No, none of that. No, I didn't mean to. No, it was a mistake. Just tell me the truth. Her jaw tightened. Then, after a long silence, she whispered, because I wanted to see if I still could. I blinked. What? She looked up at me, eyes wet, lips trembling, but I wasn't falling for that anymore. I wanted to see if I still had something. I don't even know how to explain it, Curtis. I felt like we were just going through the motions, and I wanted to feel wanted. I didn't plan this. It just happened. I laughed then. A real, bitter laugh. Months, Lorna. You're telling me you accidentally fell into someone else's arms for months? Her face crumbled. I don't love him. That made me pause. Not because I cared whether she loved him or not, but because I suddenly realized what she wasn't saying. She hadn't said she loved me, either. I let that settle between us. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. You know, I said after a moment, I came back here tonight thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd hear something that made sense. That would at least explain why you threw everything away. She stepped forward. Curtis. I stepped back. No, I said sharply. You don't get to reach for me now. Not after this. Her hands fell to her sides. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. So, what now? What's the big plan? You said Nolan left. Did he leave for good? Or just until you could figure out how to fix this mess? Lorna flinched. I told him to leave. Why? She hesitated. I gave a humorless chuckle. Because you got caught? Or because you actually want to fix this? She didn't answer. And that told me everything. I turned for the door. Curtis, please, she said quickly. Please, don't do this. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. Do what, Lorna? Just don't leave. Stay. Let's talk. Let's figure this out. I turned to face her, and for the first time since I walked in, I let her see it. The exhaustion, the disappointment, the weight of what she had done. Figure what out? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. How to pretend this didn't happen. How to go back to the way things were. She swallowed hard. I shook my head. You don't get it, do you? Her lip trembled. Curtis, You broke us. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know. No, I said, stepping closer, my voice steady. You don't know. You don't know what it feels like to look at someone and realize they were never who you thought they were. To know that every single moment I trusted you was just a joke to you. She sobbed into her hands. But I didn't comfort her. Not this time. You made your choice, I said finally. And now I'm making mine. Then, without another word, I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But what happened next? That was the part one never saw coming. I didn't go far that night. I drove around for a while, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was a storm. Memories of our life together clashing with the cold, hard truth of what she had done. At some point, I found myself parked outside a cheap motel. The neon vacancy sign flickered in and out, buzzing in the quiet night. I checked in without thinking, barely remembering the conversation with the guy at the front desk. I just needed somewhere to breathe, somewhere that wasn't haunted by the ghost of my marriage. Lying on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, I kept waiting for the anger to hit me. The real, raw rage. The kind of fury that would make me want to break something, to scream, to demand answers she could never give. But it never came. Instead, all I felt was empty. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up to my phone buzzing. Squinting against the harsh glow of the screen, I saw her name. Lorna. I ignored it. A minute later, another text. Curtis, please. Just tell me where you are. Then another. I don't want to lose you. I let out a bitter laugh. Too late for that, sweetheart. More messages poured in, but I didn't bother reading them. I tossed the phone onto the nightstand and rubbed my temples. What was I supposed to do now? Divorce? Obviously. But how do you even start untangling 10 years of marriage in a single night? The house, the bank accounts, the friends we shared, all of it, suddenly felt like a minefield I had to navigate. I was still lost in thought when a knock at the door nearly made me jump. I froze. No one knew I was here. No one should know. My pulse pounded as I slowly got up, crossed the room, and looked through the peephole. Lorna. My chest tightened. How the hell had she found me? I hesitated before opening the door just wide enough to see her face. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red-rimmed and glassy. Curtis, she breathed, relief flooding her expression. Thank God. I held up a hand. How did you find me? She bit her lip. Your location is still linked to my phone from when we shared our accounts. I had to talk to you. I exhaled through my nose. There's nothing to talk about. Please. Her voice cracked. Just hear me out. Something in me wanted to slam the door in her face, to walk away without another word. But against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in hesitantly, as if she knew she didn't belong there. She wrapped her arms around herself, her breath shaky. Curtis, I know I hurt you. And I know I can't take it back. But I swear I was going to end things with him. I was just scared. I scoffed. Scared of what, exactly? That I'd find out? That he wouldn't want you after I left? Her face twisted. No. Scared of losing us. I shook my head in disbelief. You lost us the second you decided I wasn't enough. Tears streamed down her face. I hate myself for this. I wish I could go back and undo everything. I studied her, searching for something real in her words. Some part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was just some terrible mistake that could be fixed. But then she made a mistake. She sniffled, wiped her eyes, and whispered, I already told Nolan it was over. I stilled. You told him? I repeated. So, that means it wasn't over before I caught you? Lorna's breath hitched. I was going to end it. I laughed bitterly, running a hand over my face. Wow. Just wow. Curtis, please, she begged. I don't want to lose you. I looked at her then, really looked at her. And in that moment, I realized something I should have known from the start. She wasn't here because she loved me. She was here because she was losing control. And she hated that more than anything. I took a deep breath, then reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around the cold metal. Without a word, I took out my wedding ring, held it up between us, and placed it on the motel nightstand. Lorna's face crumpled. Curtis. I met her eyes, my voice steady. You don't have to lose me, Lorna. I stepped back toward the door, opening it. Because I was never yours to begin with. She let out a strangled sob, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, leaving my past behind. I thought that was the end of it, but I had no idea what was coming next. I left Lorna in that motel room, but she wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. The next few days were a blur. I went back to work, tried to go about my life like I wasn't dragging a storm behind me. But the weight of what happened clung to me like a second skin. Everywhere I went, I felt like people could see it on me. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the emptiness. Lorna kept texting, calling. I ignored her. Then came the emails. At first, they were the same desperate pleas. Please talk to me. Please don't do this. I love you. It was a mistake. But then, the messages started changing. One morning, I opened my inbox to find a single sentence staring back at me. I need to tell you the truth about Nolan. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. I knew better than to take the bait, but against my better judgment, I typed out a response. I don't care. Don't contact me again. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me, some morbid curiosity, some unresolved bitterness, made me pick up. Lorna's voice came through the line, small and shaky. Curtis, please. Just hear me out. I sighed. You've got 2 minutes. There was a pause, then she whispered, I wasn't the only one. I frowned. What? She took a deep breath. Nolan. He's been doing this for years. With other women. Women he works with. I wasn't special to him. I was just another name on his list. I ran a hand down my face. You think that changes anything? No, but, she hesitated. You should know. One of those women was married to your boss. My blood ran cold. I sat up straighter. What did you just say? She sniffled. Her name's Melissa. She's been married to Greg for 10 years. And Nolan. He's been sleeping with her for months. Just like he was with me. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Greg wasn't just my boss. He was one of my closest friends. The man who gave me my first big break. Who stood by me through tough times. Who once told me I was like family to him. And his wife had been tangled up with the same man who destroyed my marriage. The room started spinning. You're lying, I said. Lorna let out a bitter laugh. I wish I was. But if you don't believe me, ask Greg yourself. I ended the call without another word. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't just drowning in my own betrayal. I was about to drag someone else into the storm. And I had no idea what I was about to uncover. I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, my mind racing. Greg. The man I respected. The man who had my back for years. The man who always spoke about loyalty, trust, and hard work. And his wife had been sleeping with the same man who wrecked my marriage? I had two choices. I could walk away, bury this, let Greg find out on his own like I had. Or I could do what no one did for me. My hands were steady as I dialed his number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then Greg's voice came through, casual and unsuspecting. "Curtis, my man. What's up?" I hesitated for half a second. Then, "We need to talk. Now." The shift in his tone was instant. "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Meet me at Ray's in 20. Silence. Then, "I'll be there." The diner was nearly empty when I arrived. I sat in a booth near the back, hands clasped together, running over the words in my head. How do you tell a man his wife has been cheating? How do you say, "Hey, remember that guy who's been smiling in your face at work? Yeah, he's been sleeping with your wife." Greg walked in 10 minutes later, his face drawn in confusion. He slid into the booth across from me, setting his phone on the table. "All right, you've got me worried. What's going on?" I took a slow breath. "It's about Melissa." His brow furrowed. "What about her?" I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "She's having an affair." Greg went completely still. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, finally, he let out a dry chuckle. "Is this some kind of joke?" I shook my head. His face hardened. "What the hell are you talking about?" I leaned forward. "It's Nolan." That name alone was enough to make Greg's expression crack. I saw the way his eyes darkened, the slight twitch in his jaw. "You're lying." His voice was flat, but I could hear the edge in it. I pulled out my phone, opened Lorna's last message, and slid it across the table. "Read it." Greg stared at the screen. I saw the moment the words sank in, the way his grip tightened around the phone, the way his nostrils flared. Then, without a word, he stood up. "Greg." But he was already moving. I threw some cash on the table and followed him outside. "Where are you going?" I demanded. He didn't stop. "To get answers." "Greg, wait." I grabbed his arm, forcing him to face me. "You don't want to do anything stupid." His eyes burned with something dangerous. "Don't tell me what I want to do, Curtis." I exhaled sharply. "Trust me, I know exactly how this feels. But you need to think." Greg's hands curled into fists. "So, what? I just let her get away with it?" I shook my head. "No, but you don't go in blind, either." His jaw clenched. "Then what do you suggest?" I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But what I did know, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Greg paced back and forth, fists clenching and unclenching, his breaths coming sharp and uneven. I could see it in his eyes. He was barely keeping himself together, and I knew that feeling all too well. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It rewires something inside you. It makes you question everything. "We need proof," I said finally. Greg stopped mid-step, turning to me. "Proof? What more proof do I need than this?" He waved my phone in the air. "Your wife admitted it. That should be enough." I shook my head. "It's not. If you go in there with just my word and a text message, she's going to deny it. Twist it. Make you the bad guy." Greg's jaw tightened. He didn't want to hear it, but deep down, he knew I was right. After a long pause, he exhaled. "So what do we do?" I hesitated. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I pulled up a number on my phone and hit dial. It rang twice before a voice answered. "Didn't expect to hear from you again so soon," Lorna said, her voice hesitant. Greg stiffened at the sound of her name. "I need you to do something for me," I said flatly. A pause. Then, warily, "What?" I took a breath. "Meet me. Right now." Silence. Then, "Where?" I looked at Greg. He nodded. "At your place," I said. "And bring your phone. You're going to call Nolan." ####. We waited in the car, parked across the street from my old house. The lights were on inside, and through the window, I could see Lorna pacing. Greg tapped the steering wheel impatiently. "You sure she'll do it?" I nodded. "She's desperate to make things right. She'll call him." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Lorna. "He's picking up. Listen in." I put her on speaker. The call clicked on. "Lorna?" Nolan's voice was cautious, like he already knew something was wrong. You need to tell me the truth, Lorna said, her voice shaky. How many women have there been? A long silence. Then, finally, Nolan let out a slow sigh. Does it matter? Greg's entire body tensed beside me. Yes, it matters. Lorna snapped. Were you with Melissa? Another pause. Then, casually, Nolan said, You really want the list, sweetheart? Because trust me, you weren't special. Greg grabbed the dashboard so hard I thought he might rip it off. Lorna's voice cracked. I trusted you. Nolan chuckled. That's on you, then, isn't it? I could hear her breath hitch. And what about Curtis? What about Greg? Nolan let out a low laugh. Curtis? Come on, you think I was worried about him? He was never gonna find out. And Greg? Well, Melissa's had her fun. I don't see why she should stop now. That was it. Greg threw open the car door and stormed toward the house. I barely had time to react before I was right behind him. Lorna swung the door open just as Greg reached the porch, her eyes wide with fear. Greg, wait. But he brushed past her, heading straight for the kitchen where Melissa stood frozen, her phone still in her hand. Her face drained of color when she saw him. Greg. He cut her off. Don't. Just don't. Melissa's lips parted, but no words came out. She knew. She knew. And then, without another word, Greg took off his wedding ring, placed it on the counter, and walked out. I followed him. As we stepped back onto the porch, Greg let out a slow breath. I'm done. I nodded. Me too. We stood there in silence, two men who had just lost everything. And yet, somehow, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Greg and I stood in the cold night air, the weight of everything that had just happened settling in. It was over. No more lies. No more betrayals. No more clinging to a past that had already crumbled beneath us. Greg let out a deep breath and turned to me. So, what now? I gave a small, tired smile. Now? We move forward. He scoffed. Forward. Sounds easy when you say it. I shrugged. It's not. But it's better than staying stuck in this mess. For the first time in days, I felt something shift inside me. The anger, the pain. It was still there, but it wasn't all I felt anymore. There was something else. Relief. Hashtag. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, tough conversations, and figuring out how to untangle myself from the life I had built with Lorna. She tried, of course. Called. Texted. Begged me to talk. But I was done. I wasn't going to let her back in. I found a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No ghosts of the past. No memories of a love that had turned into a lie. Just a fresh start. Greg and I kept in touch. Turns out, when you go through something like this with someone, it bonds you in a way nothing else can. We grabbed drinks, swapped horror stories about divorce lawyers, and even managed to laugh about the sheer insanity of what we had been through. One night, as we sat at the bar, Greg nudged my arm. So, when are you getting back out there? I raised an eyebrow. Back where? He smirked. Dating. You know, the thing people do when they're not married to cheating spouses? I chuckled, shaking my head. Not anytime soon. Come on, man, he said. Not all women are like them. I exhaled. I know. I just need time. And for the first time, I really meant it. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't closed off. I wasn't going to let what happened define me forever. I just needed space to be me again. And I was okay with that. A year later, my life looked completely different. New job, new apartment, new peace of mind. I ran into Greg at a coffee shop one morning, and he was smiling, actually smiling, as he sat across from a woman I had never met before. I raised an eyebrow. He just grinned and mouthed, later. And you know what? I was happy for him. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can shape you, make you stronger. And in the end, sometimes losing everything is exactly what you need to finally find yourself.